Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. My name is Debbie. I'm a mixed media artist and it's lovely to see you here. If you're new, welcome. If you are one of my lovely regulars, welcome back. Now before we get on with today's video, some housekeeping. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe and leave a comment if you have time. I try to get back and answer them all individually. And if you like what you see here today and like what you see on my channel, please do consider joining my Patreon, where you find much more of that sort of thing. And yeah, generally in a lot of detail, a lot extra. So that out of the way, it's almost Christmas and I wanted to come up with something that was a little bit Christmassy, but I don't think it's going to happen because I wanted to do a favourite 5 because I know you love those. And PanPastels has been requested by quite a few people. So my favourite PanPastels and the colours that I have, some of them are Christmassy, some of them not so much. We have an honourable mention. Favourite 5 are these here. So let's just see how we go, because I thought, okay, something with hills and mountains and water and so forth. And if it's a bit Christmassy, we'll just see how this goes. I love this Payne's grey one. Beautiful dark colour. Titanium white is probably one of my most used. As you can see, I don't use them an awful lot, but when I do, I use them again and again and again, and then put them away for a while. This is the trouble with having so many art supplies, and I find that I bought these originally, used them, was a bit underwhelmed and popped them in a cupboard, just like my jelly plate, popped them in a cupboard and sort of went off and did something else. But actually I've made a point this year of saying, right, you've bought these things, you're going to get them out and you're going to use them, and that's the end of it. I gave myself a talking to. Raw Umber Tint is a quite nice one. It's actually more of a soft grey. It's the softest possible, lightest version of the Raw Umber, but it's very, very nice. This one is Yellow Oxide. I think I must have Yellow Oxide and Payne's Grey in just about every medium that makes it. Orange Extra Dark. I want beige, but at the moment I'm not, because I've spent enough this month. So Orange Extra Dark will become the beige, which is what I've been using it for. And Bright Yellow Green, which again, not a colour I use an awful lot. We may not use all of these today, especially if we decide that we are going to do a snow scene, or if this turns into a snow scene. Now, what do I use to put them on with? Well, I have a couple of these soft tools for each one. That's actually not the correct one for that. Grab something else for the white. And I have some cheaper makeup sponges, and please don't write in. I know these are not great for the environment. However, neither of the ones that we purchase, which are made from much the same thing, and these, when we purchase both, but what I mean is that these are the ones that are actually recommended to be used with PanPastels. They're exactly the same deal, but a lot more expensive. And the thing is that makes these more environmentally friendly is how we use them. Sorry, little rant incoming. We can wash these out, and we really need to do that. And the way I do that is when they get a bit grubby, like this one's sort of approaching that stage, I'll get a whole heap, put some warm water in a bowl, squirt of shampoo. Shampoo is really quite good for most of these sorts of things. And wash them and let them dry. I've had some of these for more than 10 years, and that's not just because I don't use them, because I do use them for other things, actually. I wash them out. There's a few new ones, some needed replacing. It's the same with these little makeup things here. Again, not brilliant, but I use them until the wheels fall off them, and you can use them for a long time. It makes absolutely no difference whether you buy the proprietary brand ones that go with what you're buying, or something a bit cheaper. They're all made in the same place, of the same material, and again, if we don't use them and wash them and look after them, then none of them are very good for the environment. Rant over. Thank you very much for listening, and I promise normal service. So let's swatch these colours, because we've got some really lovely darks. This Payne's Grey here is, it's stunning for skies and water, and that's where I tend to use most of my dark blues, or any colour blue actually, is smoke and smoke. Good grief, it's been a long day. Sky and water. I won't swatch the titanium white because trust me, it won't do a bit of good. It's white. This is great for mists and for creating distance in a picture. So if everything's a bit too crammed up, putting some of this over the top of your sketch in certain places will make it automatically disappear into the background, and it's really good for that. So that's that one. Let us go with the yellow oxide. This is another very nice one. Beautifully saturated colors, excellent quality products. One caveat: some of these have got cancer warnings on them. Now, not something to panic over. It is a state of California thing, and the laws there are quite strict about cancer, things that can cause cancer. However, we don't do things that are stupid. Don't breathe the dust in. Don't let it sit on your fingers for a long time. Just be careful. Wash your hands and don't create dust and then breathe it in. That sort of thing is just a general it's something that you should be careful about with most of your art products, actually. But I did want to address that because the labels are there, especially on the white here, warning cancer, and it's P65 warning from that particular set of rules. And like I said, the Californian rules are pretty strict. Right, onto our raw umber tint. It's just a really lovely subtle warm grey. I see that as a warm grey, and that's how I use it basically. The orange extra dark, I think that's all it is. Yes, orange extra dark is another nice one, and when mixed it's a nice brown. I use it as a mid brown. I'm thinking, where have I missed one? Because there are meant to be 5 in favourite 5, but it's the white one. So our honourable mention goes to bright yellow green. And when I say bright yellow green, I absolutely mean bright yellow green. Now, I'm not a pastel artist. I am a mixed media artist. So I never use anything at all in its pure form. And I always use it with a lot of other things. I'm just going to sketch myself something here. Again, very much working out of my head. So this could go either way. Let's have another bit of a thing down here. So just a very, very simple landscape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this nice and moody with a goodly bit of the Payne's Grey up the back here. Leave a few gaps. Got the spine there, and that's a bit of a problem. Now, I also fix these, and I fix them with hairspray. I've been doing this for 42 years, whenever I've used anything that requires fixing. I'm using the umber tint now, and maybe a little bit of white in there as well. Yeah, cheap hairspray will do the job because it's a very similar product. Actually, let's put some of this just preparatory onto here. This might turn into a snow scene after all, And then we could use it in the water, and the reason for that is water always reflects what you see in the sky. A bit on the hills as well. And let's use our orange up here. Some of the colours they don't compute when you look at them and you say, right, that one's orange and now we've got some yellow and things like that. It doesn't work, because you look at that and you think, well, that's not really orange. Trust me, it probably was at one point. And yeah. Right, so what I do is I use these as a base, and like I said, being a mixed media artist, I am going to come back and do other things to these. So I never just, sorry about my arm there in the way, I never just sketch simply with one thing or the other. Get some colour into there. It can have some white on it, but it doesn't need very much. Yeah, so I wouldn't now go on and finish this sketch with these. What I will do now is I will fix this with hairspray and allow it to dry, and I shall return momentarily. Right, we're now dry here, and the next thing I would normally do is to go straight in with some coloured pencils. And like I said, I want to get a little bit. I tend to work from wet to dry, so this is an exception to that. Normally I'd start with gouache, acrylic gouache, watercolour, acrylic markers, inks, anything wet I'll start with, and then I go to coloured pencils, and then finally there to markers of all sorts. So there might be acrylic marker pens, there might be fine liners, but that sort of thing. This is the exception, and it feels sort of odd because I've started out with something a hell of a lot, you know, sort of different. It's dry, and put a cloud there. Like I said, there's some weather coming in this scene. Especially over here. And this is Chinese white is a really good pencil for this. It's super bright. I know a lot of people say about the Holbein white being the best, and it is at least as good, but it's not the best. They're all good. This one is a Derwent Light Fast in chocolate, and again, really after a little bit of the beginnings of texture and form here. Just to see. I think what I really want is my grey ink or something like that. No, this antelope brown. This one is a Dale Rowney ink FW. It's an acrylic ink, and I'm going to get that. This one's antelope brown, which is one of my absolute favourites. I'm going to water it down quite a bit because I just need to give those hills a little bit of form before I start with coloured pencil. But the PanPastels just make an absolutely fabulous first layer. They're a great way of getting a very quick background down. And it's soft, and that's what I love about it. Soft, especially for skies, but also for water and things like that. Now, ink being ink, I will build onto this because we've got our first layer there, but I want a little bit more dynamic effect by putting some heavier coats down here closer to the water's edge, and keeping that white line along the top, which helps to make the sky look lovely and dramatic. And I love using inks as well. You'll see a favourite 5 of those in my playlist, actually. They're it's a bit of a departure of the usual favourite 5, because normally I do it like this, like we are today, where we choose one medium and we choose 5 colours. Whereas in the ink one, I actually ended up choosing 5 inks. And the fact that they were all inks and all pigment ink and light fast was what held them together in my mind. Right. That will do quite nicely, I think. Now let's have a look at this. Another one I've got here is Payne's Grey. And now, being pigment inks, these need a good shake because they do have pigment in them which sinks to the bottom. And I'm going to put a couple of drops of that in, because what I want to do there is to get my beloved Dome blender here, this one, and even make this sky a bit more dramatic than it is. And I like the texture in a sky. Even when a sky is just completely blue, I'll rarely paint it that way, because I like a little bit of scratchiness, a little bit of texture and interest. And this is this could be a nighttime scene actually, but I'm actually intending that it looks more like an impending storm. Sort of quite dry brush there. This also helps to really emphasize the color on the hills. Now, while we're at it and got the same brush and ink, we can add something to the water here. Further away, it just needs to have a little bit of movement, a little bit of texture. Then we can come back in with a white pencil and define it a bit. And like I said, the sky is always reflected in the water, so you can't really have a blue sky that's bright and sunny and grey water, or the other way around. Can't have lovely blue sparkling water and a sky like this. You can keep adding into there, at least until you've used all the ink up. I feel quite virtuous now. I would give that a small dry, because one of the biggest failings with mixed media that people find is they say, oh look, mixed media doesn't work for me, I've tried it and nothing happened. It's just, you know, you're making marks and going here and there with your coloured pencils, nothing is working for me. My answer to that is make sure that all the layers are dry. It is the single biggest failing with mixed media and things like that, is that the layers are just not dry. And if that happens, the coloured pencils will not make any mark at all. So yeah, if that's happening to you, that's why. Right, moving from the back to the front, let's put some white pencil, and I'm using my Chinese white from Derwent Drawing, which is my favourite, as I said, and just a little bit of movement on that water there, or a bit of shine. Where it's coming from, who knows, probably off these hills. Keep that light, so at least it looks a bit snowy. I mean, goodness, we have to make an effort, don't we? That can have a bit up there too. You can still add clouds, and wherever there's a light spot you can go. I'm using the pencil on the side actually, because I really quite want that texture and also the really good coverage from it. Right, forest pencil, just going to make sure that's nice and clean along there, and then we can work out what we're going to do here. It's not much in the way of trees here. We could add a tree, but first of all I'm going to go back in with this brush and give these hills a bit of definition. It's very, very quick. We don't have to mess about too much here. This could be a seascape too. It could be a storm at sea. It could be the night coming in. It can be all sorts of things. Let's get our other sketch ink. Now this is a Raw and Klingner sketch ink, and you'll recognize this if you've seen my ink video. Again, one of my absolute favorites. Love it because it's just the right color green and perfect for this sort of thing. Now you might say, well, why did you go with all the PanPastels and then cover it up with ink and all sorts of things? You can still see it through there because these inks are quite transparent and they're really a glaze. And that's the thing, we're glazing over the top. So we've started with these colors and they will still be visible. This would look a lot different if we hadn't done that and just gone straight in onto a white paper, a white page. As you can see, you've got that lovely warmth coming through. And I love this brush because I can get all sorts of effects, stippling the inks on, that sort of thing. Just making a nice and interesting, just using the froth off the top of the ink at the moment, but using this to make a nice interesting foreground with texture, but that doesn't compete too much with the overall effect. And it's all thanks to those PanPastels as an underlayer, which I absolutely love. Keep going there. And I think I do want some sort of a tree in there. So what we're going to do, fingers are very important. Great tools, but do wash them afterwards because, like I said, we don't really have much of an idea about what's in some of these things. and they're not all good. So I'm going to dry this and I shall return then. The drying bit is frightfully boring, I'm sure, so it's probably not something we all need to be here for. I've got a heat gun by Ranger actually, which is what I use for my cards, and it's brilliant for this. You could also use a hairdryer, whichever one works for you best. Right, next one is a Derwent drawing in yellow ochre, and just to define this bit a little more and add the textures that I want on here, again using the pencil on its side. I'm not wild about that bit, so let's go in with a pencil which is actually dark indigo. It's a Caran d'Ache one because I want a bit more definition in there. Whatever you do with the previous layers, and when I say layer, I don't mean from the pan pastel up, I mean from the back coming forward, because what we do when we draw things is we tend to start at the back. This is the basic convention, is to start at the back and move forward. So you start with the sky and then you do the distant hills, a bit more indigo there. You start with the sky, you then come back, do the distant hills, and we've got water in the middle ground here. And all of that gets done, and then the foreground, plus any details. I'm just filling in with a bit more ink because I don't want the graininess that I've got there. I want to keep some of it further out, but not close in. Like that a little bit more defined. And also this is a really good opportunity to add some movement to the water. So I'm using a round brush and some more of the indigo ink, which is lovely, because this is not a beach here. This is a mountain or a hilly bit in front of a body of water. Thinking more Lakes District in Britain, but you know, some sort of lake like that. So I want it better defined along that edge. Chances are this one is going to go a bit longer than my usual favourite 5s, but I figured it's Christmas, let's just do it. Right. Now let's see about a tree. Let's keep that same brush into the brown ink and bring that up there. Whatever tree we're going to put in is going to be skeletal because it's winter. But that's okay. I just love the way a tree will anchor the scene and give us a bit of perspective there. This one's been leaning for a while. It appears to be quite windy in this part of the world. Right. It's just the start of the tree. Let's dry that again, because then we can come back in with pencils. You could use, if you don't want to use ink for this, you could use, I wouldn't use watercolour because it's not going to go over it all. You could use acrylic or you could use gouache. Now with my chocolate pencil, just going to neaten that up a bit. And let's try the yellow ochre there to give it a little bit of highlight without adding too many more colours to the mix. What I really particularly want is my dark brown fine liner, because I can then come along and define these bits, but also add some branches in. I tend to work in the direction of growth. You can do it the other way, and as I've been telling my patrons this week and during some of my films for them, is do learn to work in all directions, not just the direction that's comfortable, because sometimes you can't do that. I mean, if you were to paint a mural on a wall, you can't move the wall around to suit yourself. So sometimes it's good to practice other directions as well. But I'm going to be quite lazy and feeble here and just do what's comfortable today because it's nearly Christmas. That will do as an excuse until I can think of something else. Okay, nice tenderly branches. This is the difference between a tree that's dead and a tree that's dormant. Is a tree that's dormant is going to have these smaller branch bits and so forth because it's showing signs of new growth, whereas a tree that's dead won't bother. So just the light in this picture is coming from the left, which is usual for me. I think I mentioned that at the beginning, but if I didn't, that's my usual way of doing things. And that's why I've got the light coming out that way. Tend to be thicker, nearer to the tree. And here, for example, you could put something up this way as well, because the tree may have decided at one point to put something there. If the branch gets too thick up the top, you just have to sort of work with it, thicken it more down the bottom, and just pretend that that's what you intended all along. Right, so that's that there. And we could put some sort of texture here with the yellow oxide to show some grass. It's not much of a snow scene. There's only snow on the distant hills, and that might be light, so I don't know if there is any snow, but that's just like it is in real life. The news keeps telling us we're going to have a white Christmas this year. They've been doing that for, well, as long as anyone can remember, to be fair. So I'm just using my forest pencil here to put some grassy sort of texture here, as you would expect. But again, not hiding what's behind it, not hiding the pan pastel completely. It's still showing through, funny enough. And you've got these glazes that go over the top and textures and so forth. So then we've got the ink, and that's not being hidden either. I'm still able to see that in here. I'm just sort of adding to it with a bit of grass, as you would expect to find in this sort of setting. Bit rocky, maybe. The day is certainly bleak for the people who live here. And maybe come back with my beloved green oxide. This is a Caran d'Ache Luminance one. I always get nervous when they get to this size, especially when they're a favourite, until I remember I have 3 more sitting waiting, because I have not fear of missing out, I have faux row, fear of running out. I'm not sure if that's a thing or not, or whether I've just made it up. Right, just going to dry this off and go back into the ink there and just add to that. Yeah, fear of running out is my big thing. And you know, there's the full set syndrome and all this sort of thing. There are so many things. There's enough material here for an entire conference in my head, I'm afraid. Anybody's trained in psychiatry and interested. So yeah, we can add fear of running out. I've grown up in the country and I've lived in the country most of my life, and I think that was the big thing, is if something ran out, you didn't go in and get more of it. It was just, well, that's run out then, and go without. So fear of running out has become an issue. Right. Rather than bore you to death with that, here is my very, very wintry scene, starting out with PanPastels, and to show you how I work back into it with my other things. So like I said, if you don't have inks, you could use gouache, you could use acrylic gouache, you could use all sorts of things, but this is what I've chosen today, and it works particularly well together. And the liner and so forth like that, the fine liner goes well. And of course the coloured pencils for textures. Where would we be without coloured pencils for textures? Yeah, favourite 5 + 1 honourable mention PanPastel. And yeah, I particularly recommend them for putting down colour quite quickly and making really very nice backgrounds. But do fix them, because especially, I mean, it's not going to bother your ink too much and it's not going to bother your pencils, but your fine liners will get a bit annoyed, especially Pigma Micron ones, which, can I grab one of those just very quickly to show you? This is a Pigma Micron. I adore these and they're fabulous, and I've had some of them for a long, long time in constant use. They're excellent quality and beautiful, but they will not put up with dust and they will not put up with moisture. You can wreck them immediately if there's just a small amount of moisture. So I fix my PanPastels. I fix anything like that when I'm using it, because it is just so much easier. But like I said, you don't have to be talked into buying the proprietary brand fixatives. By all means, if they're cheap and cheerful where you live and you think that that's a reasonable thing, by all means, yes, do use them. I'm not saying don't use them. I'm just saying everything costs money and it matters. So a cheaper alternative is hairspray, and I've been using it for years. So thank you so much for watching. I wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Stay safe and enjoy your time with loved ones, or however you prefer to celebrate. And I will see you again in the probably, yeah, just after Christmas, in that long week between Christmas and New Year. I'll see you again then. Bye.